Hey, this is Steve Halleck of TikToking.com. As always, you can find me at Steve Halleck on Instagram. And for those of you who saw this review quickly already, you're not crazy. I am re-recording this. I tried new camera equipment and you all unanimously said you prefer this one. So I'm listening. But this is too good a watch to not have a good review up of. So I'm redoing it for you guys. I'm here now with the Roger Smith Series 2. This one happens to be a unique piece with a custom ordered dial and some unique engraving on the movement, so I'll show you all of that. But to understand the Roger Smith, you first have to understand George Daniels and who he is and who Roger is. The best way to do that is to watch the movie. It's a documentary called The Watchmaker's Apprentice. It's on, I think, Amazon, Netflix, iTunes. It's all over the place. I think free most places right now. And that really goes into the relationship of Roger and George. Also, check out Roger Smith's YouTube videos. He shows you how he makes the hands and the dials and the cases and everything. They're really, really, really cool. So I highly recommend you give those a watch. But just to summarize very, very quickly, George Daniels was probably the most important watchmaker of the 20th century. He was a British guy and was a proponent of what was later named the Daniels Method, which was the training of a watchmaker with the ability to do all 32 crafts required to make a watch by hand, all under one roof. Now, a lot of us who get into high-end watchmaking think that we're getting a watch made all under one roof when we spend a lot of money and sort of by one guy. But the reality is that that very, very rarely happens. Even with something like the Philippe Dufour Simplicity, the case was made somewhere else. The dial was made by somebody else. Even the movement bridges were made elsewhere. So to actually have a watch that is made all in one place, all by hand, every single part, it is a true rarity in horology, and there are very, very few people in the history of horology that have the ability to do that. So George worked by himself for most of his career until the very end, when a young upstart watchmaker named Roger Smith wouldn't take no for an answer and ended up being George's apprentice and protege. George left him all of his workshop materials and everything in his will, and Roger has continued this tradition of handmade British watchmaking. And this is his Series 2, which he made a Series 1, which was not all handmade by him, and then the Series 2 was the first watch that was, and this is it. So, first thing you'll notice, very kind of classic design with, little twists here and there. But this particular one, as I said, was custom ordered. It's a unique piece. The normal Series 2s have this engine turned dial only in the middle, and then outside is a silver hour ring, and these markers are engraved into that ring. This is fully engine turned all the way to the edge and has these unbelievably stunning heat blued applied Roman numerals. And then the movement has a little special stuff too, so we'll go back there soon. But first I want you to take a look at the just quality of this hand engine turning. George was a master of engine turning. He had the engines in his workshop, and he taught Roger how to do it and left him his machines, and Roger's killing it with the engine turning. So you can see there's basically this basket weave motif that's going kind of diagonally through most of the dial, and then it switches direction in here. This is the power reserve, up, down, and this is a small seconds. And then of course in here you have your rose turning, more of a circular hobnail motif with the engine turning. So it sets each of the dial parts apart, and then of course they each have these sort of silver barrier rings. So it is a three-dimensional multi-stepped thing going on here. again with the nameplate also engraved and applied. So you get a lot of depth with this dial, and of course, these hands are just absolutely to die for. I think Roger's YouTube series on hands, I think is like 7 or 9 parts long or something like that. And you can see exactly how he hand makes a set of hands. The case is a 3-part case, also made in-house by hand. And it's a very, very beautiful, classically proportioned, classically made case. You just very, very, very extremely rarely see handmade cases in the watch industry. Even if you think what you're looking at is a handmade case, it probably is not. Again, he has a YouTube series on how he makes this and, cuts it out of the raw gold, basically. So really cool. And the piece de resistance, the movement itself, this engraving on the 3/4 plate and on the balance cock, that's the custom ordered extra special engraving. On this piece, the normal ones are just the plain frosted all the way around. You can see there's, the 3/4 plate is a very British kind of watchmaking, traditional watchmaking technique to add rigidity to the movement, and the gold chatons and blued screws. All of the movement basically was designed so that it would be easy for a obviously competent watchmaker to service for centuries into the future, long after we're gone. So it's designed to be very robust and very easy to disassemble without messing up things that are important. Every single steel part in this movement is black polished. So you can see some of the black polish there. But even the dial facing pieces, everything is polished the same, no matter if you can see it or if you can't see it. So here you have these are polished gold, and they hold what is another signature element of the Roger Smith and George Daniels pieces, which is a coaxial escapement. So George developed the coaxial escapement. Now Omega uses it a lot, obviously, but Roger has been perfecting it as well in wristwatches, and he uses coaxial escapement in all of his watches because he and George believed it to be better. So in theory, it needs less servicing, and because it doesn't require lubrication in the way it works. I'm not going to get too technical on that here. You can look it up if you're interested in exactly how the coaxial escapement works. Again, for robustness and also for kind of depth and beauty, Roger wanted a fairly thick and 3-dimensional movement, and so this is no particularly small or thin watch. It is only 40 millimeters, so it's classically proportioned, but it's got some beef to it. It definitely feels solid, and it does have a lot of 3-dimensionality to it, which I hope comes through on the video. I'll let you guys just kind of look for a minute here. Don't get to see these very often, so soak it in. Cool, now let me show you the watch on the wrist. As I said, it's 40 millimeters. It is, not thin, but it's a very sort of traditionally sized watch. It has a lot of wrist presence. This particular one with this custom dial, I think looks a little bit bigger on the wrist than some of the others because when you have the big marker or track going around, it kind of makes it optically appear smaller. Whereas when this engine turning dial extends all the way to the bezel, you get what kind of appears to be a bigger dial, and it makes the whole watch look bigger. But you can see it's just sort of killer on the wrist. This is basically a perfect watch. I mean, if you are into the real craft of horology and into handmade things and into the linking of the past and the future and all of these things, this is the platonic ideal of a wristwatch. It's as good as it gets. It's the real deal. And I'm really, really happy that I got a chance to have this watch. I mean, it's just fantastic, and I'm thrilled that I get to share it with you, and hope that I know most people will not get to see one of these ever in person, so I hope this makes it a little bit more real and you get a little bit more of an idea of how fantastic this watch actually is. So that's the Roger Smith Series 2. I'll be back soon with some more cool stuff, but this should be enough to hold you guys over for a little while. Thanks a lot.